I'm Elaine Adedias with People Magazine, and People is partnering with the nonprofit advocacy organization Everytown for Gun Safety. And we have a panel of professional athletes here today that are part of Everytown's Athletic Council. As gun violence survivors, you've each experienced firsthand how gun violence fractures families and communities. And as professional athletes, you have found ways to make a difference in your communities. And we appreciate you sharing your stories with us today. This week actually marks the third annual National Gun Violence Survivors Week. And it's especially important this year as we're in the midst of a pandemic. COVID-19 has dramatically exacerbated our nation's gun violence crisis, and gun violence has disproportionately affected Black and Latino communities. So I'm honored to have each of you here today, and clearly we're meeting remotely. So I'm going to introduce who's here today, which we have Devereaux Peters, who is retired from the Minnesota Lynx and is co-founder of the Athletic Council. We have Diontae Spencer, who plays for the Denver Broncos. We have Stedman Bailey, who is retired from the Los Angeles Rams, and DeAndre Bembry of the Toronto Raptors. Each of you chose your platforms to help the gun violence prevention movement because of each of your personal stories. But please, Devereaux, begin by sharing yours.
So for me in 2013, my cousin, who at the time was living in Baltimore, he had gone to a friend's house to hang out with some of his friends. At the time, a couple of his friends that were there had won some money off some lottery or something. And I guess some associates of those friends had heard about it and came over to rob them. At the time, my cousin before that had been home it was before the incident. My cousin had been home during a home invasion and was brutally beaten. So when these associates of his friends came over and with guns to rob his friends, he just wanted nothing to do with it. He wanted to leave. He had such a bad experience from the home invasion that he just wanted to get out and didn't want to be involved. So while it was going on, he got up to leave and they shot him in the back and killed him. So from that period, my family was devastated. I still remember the night that it happened and where I was and what I was doing. But from that point, I ended up getting connected with Everytown and really wanting to make a difference in gun violence prevention and seeing what I could do to prevent that from hurting other families in our community, because I know it affects us so much, and figuring out ways that I can help stop the violence.
And what were you doing? You said you remember.
I was actually in Minnesota at the time. My mom called me, I believe, at it was 2 or 3 in the morning. And I remember being asleep and she called and I ignored the first call. And she called right back. So, anytime somebody double calls you, it's usually an emergency. So I ended up picking up the phone and they told me the news. And just kind of at that point didn't really know what to do. I was really grateful to be on a team at the time that was extremely supportive and just let me take all the time that I needed to go be with family as we processed and got the funeral and everything together, and grateful to be in a position to just up and leave like that. But it was definitely a crazy evening, but I had a lot of support in moving forward from that.
Diontae, could you share?
My personal story dealing with gun violence, 2010, my dad was killed in his barbershop. He was a barber, and it was the middle of the day, I think around 6:30, 6 o'clock. 4 guys went into the barbershop attempting to rob him. And it was people that was from my hometown, from a small town of New Iberia, Louisiana. And, they went in to do a simple, thought that there was money and stuff in the barbershop, and ended up shooting my dad. And the guy that shot him, I knew him personally, just growing up playing basketball and stuff like that with him. But they went in the barbershop to do a simple robbery and ended up killing him. And it was one of those things where I never in a million years would think I would be getting a phone call, being a freshman in college in my dorm, finding out that my dad was just killed. So um, for me, that was how I dealt with it personally. Never in a million years thought it would be me in that situation. And just kind of like looking back at the whole thing, you just kind of almost kind of think you're in a dream, but you're really not. So it was just crazy. Just especially knowing the person that pulled the trigger and kind of knowing the guys that were familiar with the barbershop and stuff like that. So that was my whole incident. And not really getting to spend a lot of time with my dad because he was in prison growing up as a kid, and to get him back and kind of get that bond and grow those relationships with him as I go off to college, and getting that phone call was just kind of devastating. And it's something that I always remember. And it took me a while to still talk about it till today, but that's what I feel like my personal story can help somebody else that's either dealt with the same thing I've dealt with, or that's pretty much in those situations that a family members get killed. And it's kind of one of those things where you have to decide whether you're going to sit and be angry and be frustrated, and you want to get revenge and all those different things. But it's something that I'm comfortable talking about now because it helped me grow throughout my journey in life. And just sharing it, I feel like it affects so many different people in communities that dealt with the same issue. So
And so your father had this barbershop. Was it part of the community? Like, did everyone know this barbershop?
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, my dad was one of those guys where he was in prison, he got out, and he did a whole.
Get out. When did he get out?
My dad got out, I think I was about 12 years old, from like 3 to 12. So
And then when did he start the barbershop?
the barbershop, he's always been a barber. Even before he was incarcerated, he was a barber. And when he got out, the barbershop was back running. My grandmother had set everything up. So he was back into the community, doing everything he can to help people. Sometimes people with homeless people that, he would try to help out would sleep in the barbershop sometimes. Like, he just was that person that, like in the community that everybody looked up to. And he was always there to help. So when that happened, it was kind of a shock to the whole community, that something like that could happen, especially to him. Like, everybody knew him and stuff like that. So yeah, it was just a whole situation, because where I'm from, everybody knows everybody, and the people that done it, they're in prison. But it's just a crazy thing. So.
And what did you think when you heard that you knew that you knew the people who did it?
Um, I wasn't, to be honest, I wasn't surprised, because like where I'm from, that stuff like that happens all the time. But for it to be, my dad, and to hit so close to home, um, it was something that I couldn't, wrap my mind up around. But like I said, like, you never know, like, when a bullet doesn't have a name on it. So um, for me to go through that, as someone going off to college, being by myself, being alone, it kind of changed the way I thought and changed the way I looked at things. So um, that's about it.
Goodman.
So my story goes as 2015, I was in my third year of my NFL career, and I got into a negative situation where I ended up being suspended from my team for violating the league's substance and abuse policy. And with situation like that, the consequence is having to serve a 4-week suspension away from your team. Now, with that being said, my sole responsibility with me being on suspension is to stay in shape and to, just make sure I'm keeping myself prepared and ready for the time of when I'm done with my suspension. I'm ready to get back with the team and, just be able to rock and roll. So with me, being on the suspension and having to be away from my team, I decided to go and ask my coach if I could spend that time back in Miami, Florida, which is where I'm from, to just be with family who pretty much kept me encouraged. And I got a great support system, back home, from working out to, family and everything that I need to just mentally and physically just keep myself prepared. Now, a couple days into being home, my regular day will consist of me just, waking up every day, getting my nutrition and stuff like that together and working out. And then on November 24th of year 2015, same thing, normal day, got up, we'll go work out and, just pretty much chill for the remainder of the day. But on this day in particular, I was at my house with one of my really close friends and my two little cousins and their father. And it was around 5, 6 o'clock, we decided to step out and go have some dinner. Now, from that point, we decided to leave and, go somewhere to have dinner. And just about 30 minutes later, my life changed drastically. But anyway, so we leave my house to go get some dinner. One of my friends lived not too far from, where I stayed, and he needed to go home and change his clothes. Now, I said, okay, we can stop and let you change your clothes, whatever, get fresh so we can go have dinner. So we did that, and I want to say about 7 minutes into me being outside, I'm sitting in the car with my family, two little cousins are in the back, as well as their father. I noticed a car pulled up, and it was just in the middle of the street. And what I know about some people that lived across the street from my then friend, they sold drugs. So I honestly, remember looking back and looking at the car and just thinking, okay, that might be a car for the people across the street. And me, I'm just sitting in the front seat, I'm in my phone, probably strolling on Instagram at the time, Twitter, all the social medias. And maybe a minute later, I just started to hear shots ring out. And growing up, where I'm from, I've been in many situations before where an active shootout will happen, whether it was at a party, just many different places. My community is really bad when it comes to that. And, I remember just thinking, wow, it's a shootout going on across the street and we're here just in the middle of it. And I remember seeing the car pull off and kind of stuck there, devastated and confused on what just took place, not knowing that I had been struck twice in my head. I was shot twice in the head. And, by the grace of God, I never lost consciousness. And, I'm looking around still, in confusion. I think I may have had a concussion, but I'm alert. I remember turning around to look at my two little cousins to check on everybody. And my cousins, they're losing their minds. There were over 30 bullets that was sprayed into the car. And my two little cousins' father, who was really a hero that night, once he figured that the shots that we were hearing were coming at us, he laid on top of his kids and he was struck 11 times. He was shot 11 times. And by the grace of God, he's still living today too. But that pretty much changed, my whole life. That ended my football career. And just really left a permanent scar on my life, you know. But the fact that I am still here living well each and every day, I want to make sure that, you know, I'm being a frontline soldier to trying to use my voice, my platform to help end gun violence. You know, it's happening at a very alarming rate. And I feel like when people like myself get a chance to speak out and share my story, you know, it should soften the hearts of the many people who get a chance to hear me, to know that, you know, this really happens to real people when there are real uh, consequences, you know, so to say, to dealing with something like that, you know, and not just for myself, but, you know, my family members and so many people around me that know and love me. Um, it leaves scars on us all. So, you know, with every town, with a few different gun violence organizations, that's, you know, as much as I can, just trying to use my voice to create change.
And what were your injuries, like, specifically?
So I was shot twice. One grazed me, one actually went in and out of my head. My skull right over my eyebrow here was shattered. Um, and I had a traumatic, you know, brain injury. They say even to this day that I have a portion of my brain that doesn't work. Um, I can't really tell. You know, I do have different issues that I deal with today that I think I want to answer as we continue to move forward with this. I don't want to take up all the time, but yeah, I mean, my forehead was shattered, and you know, right now today I have a metal plate that's in my head, and um, that's it.
Thank you. DeAndre?
All right, I just want to start off by saying sorry to you all for the tragedies that you dealt with. It's crazy to hear other stories from other people. But mine started back in high school. I mean, well, back in college, I was coming out for the draft. I had just did 8 draft workouts, and like a week before the draft, my brother had passed. So I'm originally from Charlotte, and we were living in New Jersey at the time. So I had just walked in, probably like two in the morning. I walked in. Mom was talking on the phone, and I can just hear it through her tone. I wasn't even in her room. I was just in the living room, and I had just walked in or whatever, and I just heard it through her tone on the phone. I just remember going in there and just taking the phone from my mother and just hearing it the same way that she heard it. And it was just tough after that. I had canceled the rest of my draft workouts. I had about 10 to 12 more workouts, and I ended up just canceling them. Somehow I ended up being drafted 21st pick to Atlanta. And luckily I had some family there. I moved my mother there because it was pretty tough for my mother and also me and the rest of my family, of course. But it was just something we just had to get through. And having family around, I think, is definitely one of the things that you just have to have when you're trying to get to any of these tragedies, for sure.
And so how difficult was it to compartmentalize? I mean, like, you're having to work and this is like your ultimate goal, but yet you're dealing with something that, while too many people have to deal with, it's like, wait, how is this happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, as a young dude coming into the NBA, my rookie season, it was definitely tough for sure. I give all credit to the Atlanta Hawks, the team that I was with at the time that drafted me. Those guys definitely helped me out a lot. Like I said, my family as well, and also just the passion for the sport I was playing. I mean, that definitely helped me keep pushing. I mean, the number I wore, 95, was the year that he was born, 1995. So I just try to do different stuff. I obviously give back to the community on every town as well, and just try to find positive things to do out here and just keep my mind focused on the bigger picture.
As each of y'all, this has happened, several years ago. So as distance comes between you and that moment, like, how does it impact you daily? Like, is it something that you think about every day? I mean, you have his number, and I mean, you have a scar, and this is your family, each of y'all, right? Like, you know, DeAndre, like, how does it affect you personally daily?
Yeah, for sure. I think every person on here will probably say, yeah, it's probably not 1 minute that I don't think about my brother, of course. I mean, I've dealt with other tragedies, unfortunately, in my family, similar with gun violence. But I mean, it's every minute, if not every minute, every day, every hour. I mean, you could ask each one of us individually. I think they'll probably agree with that.
Devereaux?
Yeah, I agree with DeAndre. It's just regardless of how long out you are from whatever the tragic incident was, it's a consistent healing process, and it's something that you're constantly dealing with, constantly trying to battle with and learn from, and gain strength from. I know for me personally, kind of similar to what Spencer was saying earlier, like my first time I actually really talked about my cousin out loud to other people was some years after his death. I did an interview, and I just remember during the interview, it had to have been about like 4 years, maybe after 4 or 5, and just breaking down in the middle of the interview, just because there was just so much I hadn't really processed because I hadn't spoken a lot out loud. And kind of like Spencer was saying earlier, it's just you gain a lot of strength from speaking about it, and kind of standing in that truth, and being in the community of people that have dealt with similar situations. So it's a constant process of healing and just dealing with it every single day. It's just something that does not go away.
What about, like, I mean, and so during that time when you're not talking about it, is, before that first time, is it something that you're sort of just keeping away because you haven't processed it? Or is there any sort of like societal shame or anything like that? Like, what do you think was keeping you from talking about it at first?
I'm definitely somebody that like tucks away events like that deep, because I'm it's hard for me to process stuff like that. I don't, and obviously none of us enjoy feeling those emotions and having to really deal with them face on. So it's something that I kind of just like buried deep within me, and kind of just got at the time I was still playing, and just really tried to focus on my sport and anything else, to try to not deal with it and get away with it. Even the day after I got that call, I remember I went to practice the next day, and I told my coach what happened, and she said, do you need to go? And I said, no, I want to practice, because if I don't know what I'm going to do, because I didn't know how to process that information yet, and I still couldn't understand what was going on, and that's the only way I felt like I could cope with it. I think, as you grow, and especially with Everytown and starting to speak out more, speak with other survivors, like I said, you gain that community, and then you're able to discuss it more, be more comfortable, and really put yourself out there more, and understand there are a lot of people like you. And over time, it becomes easier to do. But it's definitely something that you constantly and consistently have to work at, and process and deal with.
I think for me, it's kind of based on those same things. It's like getting the confidence to really talk about it. And for me, I was angry because like just knowing the people that done it, and it being right there in my community, being from Liberia, like and when people would ask, like I wasn't embarrassed. It was just a thing like, what are people gonna think? Like, oh, your dad got killed, or like it's automatically relating to like something having to deal with drugs, or and I was just the whole time I was just kind of like just sitting there like, man, like why should I be embarrassed over something, like my dad just lost his life. Like it should be a bright spot and for me to talk about it, and um, people to understand me more. Like, it was just so many things that was going in my head, running through my head of why shouldn't I talk about it? And I'm a private person, and I was just like, I'm not ready. I kept telling myself I'm not ready. I used to do like these things in college called FCA, and they kept on like, just tell your story, and I'm like, I'm not ready. And it's been 10 years, um, 11, 2021. So it's been 11 years, and now I'm finally able to like talk about this and not get emotional and all those different things. So it takes time, it takes time to process everything, and just to kind of like realize what you're going through and what you're going to continue to go through, because it's not over. Like DeAndre said, it's something I think about every single day. And now I can use it as motivation, and use it to push myself through life, and use it as a positive. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also for each of y'all, I would think, I've lost my parents. Like, they weren't taken away from me, but I've lost them. And there's something about like the chance that you get to speak about them, though, it like keeps their memory, and you get to celebrate these people in a way. I hope y'all find. I mean, do you?
now I do. I mean, that it took time for me to get to that point. So now, I mean, I can share my story in front of 10 people or 100 people or 100,000 people. It doesn't matter now. So I think it takes time, and um, it's one of those things. Like,
And so what about you, Stedman? How does it impact you every day?
Uh, well, my situation is a little bit different, but I now have to deal with seizures as a result of the traumatic brain injury. And then, on the mental health side, depression is something that I struggle with, PTSD, anxiety. These are all things that I never dealt with before. And, I got to actually take pills, to help keep my seizures in check, and, depression pills too. And, all that stuff really sucks. I'm only 30 years old, but, I always look at it that, things could be worse. So, um, I just do what I have to do.
Yeah. Does this community help you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Just like each and every one says, just being able to talk about it, I look myself in the mirror, and I gain strength from it, just knowing that I survived something that most probably couldn't, and when I get a chance to connect with other survivors, or like that's on the panel here tonight, um, we it's like you said, it's like a community, and it helps us to all know and understand that, we're not alone, and that alone brings strength for us all, to find it, to kind of just pick our heads up and find a way to move forward.
What do you hope people take away from your story as you share it?
Um, well, for me, I just hope that people can hear, everything that I have to say, and um, to try to get on my side, or join organizations like Every Town to help with the fight of um, diminishing gun violence, or just preaching more about gun safety, because this is a real issue, and it seems like it's only getting worse at this point, and that's not good at all. So, I just hope people can hear what I have to say, and want to stand with me, like I say, in the fight against gun violence.
DeAndre, what do you hope people take away from your story?
Yeah, I mean, just trying to stay strong, definitely stay balanced, and just try to see the bigger picture of what you already wanted to achieve. I mean, for the most part, everything I'm doing now is stuff I used to talk to with my brother about before I made it to the NBA. So I'm still humble in a way, but I'm also thankful for obviously everything I've been through, but just thankful that me and my family were able to get through these tragedies and just stay focused on the bigger picture for sure.
Right. Devereaux?
I think for me, it's kind of like everybody touched on, just being able to speak out, continue to build that community where we can all hold each other up and understand each other and really be able to give that support that's necessary when you go through these type of tragedies. But then also just kind of keep voicing the issue because I think now we see so much gun violence that you can almost become numb to it because we see it so much to the point where we start to ignore it. And it's just another shooting because we just see it constantly on the news, in your neighborhoods. It's all around us. But consistently bringing up the issue that this is something that we can change if we actively put the effort in. And a lot of the times when you have organizations like Everytown and even grassroots organizations in the communities that are doing a lot to make a difference and just keep pushing and advocating for that because it's definitely as overwhelming as it can seem. It's something that we individually can help make a change in. So keep pushing that and just make sure that people understand that.
Diontae, let me ask you, I'm going to switch gears. This isn't just in a certain type of community, right? Like gun violence is in the schools. Like I've covered 14 mass shootings in my career. So what advice do you want to give young people or anyone who's growing up in a society where gun violence is it's real and it's and it's happening every day just because there's no mass shootings like at the mall or a school right now. I mean, clearly there's gun violence happening. So what advice would you give someone?
Um, my biggest advice would be just to change the narrative. I think that so many kids in communities like I was raised, and maybe like some of the people that's on this panel was raised, they don't know anything else. Like they feel like they're trapped. They feel like they're stuck. So like um this younger generation feels like guns and violence is the problem solver, but it's really just it's creating more problems. Um, and yesterday, two kids in my hometown, one went to my former high school. They shot each other. Two 16-year-old kids shot each other laying in the street. And my high school coach sent me the picture and he's like, this is what we're dealing with. And, for me, I automatically thought like, if my story, if I could have went to school, and maybe just talked and reached out to those kids and maybe just, one kid just hearing something through my voice might change something. Um, but for those two kids, it's too late, but now we have more people and kids to reach just by that one situation. So I think that, the biggest advice you can give is that don't feel like you're trapped or you're stuck. It's always a way out. It's the choices you make. I could have went down a different path. I could have dropped out of college and went back home and turned to trying to react and retaliate to violence, or and the situation would have just made everything worse. But I feel like we have to reach the youth right now because that's where these things are happening. Kids are getting in control of guns, and at 16, I wasn't focused on guns. And these two kids just shot themselves and killed themselves in the street. So um, I feel like we have to let these kids know they're not alone and they're not trapped in that environment. And it's hard, it's difficult, but the more they see people like us and the more they get to interact and see the way, people's lives have changed and where they come from, I think that's just a start, so.
Thank you. Stedman, what advice do you have?
Yes, well, my advice would be something pretty simple, just kind of tell you like my parents told me, if you see a gun, you need to go the other way. But, just kind of like Diontae said, you got a lot of these younger kids that are heavily influenced by social media, the young rappers and whatnot. And, all of them want to present this image of being a gangster and toting the guns, and it all looks good, but in reality, these are some of the things that's trapping our young men, and just really holding them back. So, I would just tell them, having a gun doesn't make you tough, not at all, but further push you back, into that trap of, if you get caught up with the weapon, what's the consequences of your action. And it could be prison, or maybe somebody push you to the edge where you actually do go and commit a murder, and now you got one person that's dead and now you going to jail. So it's a lose-lose. And a lot of guys, especially from my community, are falling into that trap. So the best thing that I could do is just be super real and authentic with the younger generation, and just tell them that's not the way that they want to go. And not everybody gonna listen, and that's life. But each one teach one, and if I could just get one of these kids, two of these kids to not fall in that trap, that's doing some kind of justice. So I mean, that's what I would have to offer. And also, like Diontae says, just thinking about what more could I do to help these kids not go down these paths, and maybe going around to the local high schools, to talk. It's a very important issue, in our community, in and out. So just continue to have these conversations about what's really good, should be able to help the problem some.
Thank you. DeAndre?
Yeah, I'll just say, just for the kids to just educate yourself on gun violence, especially in 2021. I mean, I agree something what Stedman was saying. What if you got the gun? I mean, in 2021, if you got the gun and you black, you never know the situation. So just being aware at all times, what you want to be in life, and just try to stay steady with that. I think. I mean, everything in today's life is brutal, and obviously the tragedies that we've been through has been brutal. But just educating yourself, I think, is just a great starting point on whichever role that you want to play in life, on whichever path you want to go, whether it's sports or you want to be a lawyer or any other situation. But just staying up to date.
Thank you. Devereaux?
I think all of them really hit on it, but I would just say a lot of times, I feel like we end up in these situations and circles because of a lack of, like opportunities, resources, within our communities. And I think I would just say that there are other options, even though at times there may feel like there aren't. And it can be difficult, whether your family's going through something and it seems like an easier route, or it just seems like, the cooler thing to do, like Stedman said. But there are other options. There are other areas that you could be focused on, whether it be your education or sports. There's always another route. And you don't want from either end your family to be affected in that way, because if you end up in a situation like that, not only your family can be affected, but somebody else's as well. So just focus on just continue to further and better yourself, and make sure if you do start to fall out on trap, make sure you reach out to other people, talk to those close to you, because there's always somebody that can, help you pull you out that and show you a different way.
With so much gun violence in the news, though, does it affect y'all? Like, do you feel like does it, does it give you that sort of does it take you back in terms of memories or PTSD or anything like that? Is there some sort of, how difficult is it to see so much gun violence in the news? Devereaux, you can answer.
For me, it's really frustrating to have to see it consistently. Like I said, it's constantly everywhere, and we have to deal with it all the time. But I think that's why all of us are kind of here. We want to really change that narrative, and push for, more, less gun violence, more, gun control, and just really understanding that we can change this, because just having to consistently seeing and knowing what it's doing to these families, it's terrible having to consistently watch that over and over again, knowing firsthand how that feels. But we continue to just try to push on and make that change.
Mm-hmm. Diontae?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that it's whatever like the situation is, and like she said, like the lack of resources, like all those things, but we have to, and like DeAndre said, we got to educate ourselves and educate the people that's growing up and the people that's going to be in our shoes and later on in life. They going to have kids, and it's just an effect that it always circles back. So I feel like if we can educate ourselves now and educate our youth, it's going to eventually, catch up, and we're going to be at a place where people are going to feel safe to do things, or people are aware of, the gun violence in communities. And if you're in a community where gun violence is an issue, let's talk about it. Families and these kids are running the streets and doing all kind of things, and when somebody's killed, it's a problem now. But like, if we sit there and educate ourselves, it's something that we can, I wouldn't say solve, like it's never gonna go away, but we can limit the deaths and the things that's happening in the world and the communities right now.
So, well, tell me what y'all are most hopeful about, like sort of through the work that you do, whether talk about your advocacy or something that you're proud of. What brings you hope? Diontae, you can start.
Oh, what brings me hope is, the people that we're athletes, and, people look at us as, like the invincible, or like nothing bad happens to us. But I feel like what brings me hope is that, I was that kid, I was that kid growing up, wanting to be a football player, I want to go to college and stuff like that. And now, kids are losing their lives to gun violence, and people are losing their lives. They don't get to 28. They don't get to the age I'm at to see those things. So what gives me hope is me talking about my situation, letting these kids know where I'm from, what I went through, what I'm going through and what I'm doing now to help the problem. And that gives me hope, me sitting back and not sharing my story and not getting the word out there that gun violence is an issue. If I'm not doing my job, then I'm hurting, and I'm not helping these kids that's coming up, or these kids that inspire to be, what I want to be. And it's just that gives me hope, because, like I said, 2 16-year-olds died. I wish now I could have talked to one of those kids. I could have been the difference. Or me doing what I'm doing with every time someone talking about that and it reaching those kids, like the each one teach one, like Stedman said, like it only takes one. It only takes one. We can't save the whole world, but if we can reach one kid, that might change everything for that child, that person. So that gives me hope.
Mhm. Well, that's great. Thank you. Stedman?
Yes. So, kind of just to answer your question about how do we feel when we see the ongoing gun violence in the media. For me, it sucks. Just 2 days ago, I was looking at my local news where a story was highlighted about a little 6-year-old girl who looks like me. She just was caught up in a drive-by shooting, just being at another little girl's party that was ending around 7 p.m. You got cowards out here that, may have a target, but instead of actually getting their target, they're doing a drive-by shooting. And you got little 6-year-old girls that are being caught up in the crossfire and losing their lives at such a young age. That one honestly made me shed some tears, so it really sucks to see that stuff, but just like everybody is saying, having this platform, people look at us like we're superhuman sometimes, and therefore they are more prone to listen to what we have to say as it relates to gun violence. And so, we can just continue to educate ourselves and just find out what we can do to create change. I think, we'll be moving in the right direction, and that should bring hope. And for me, just being on the Everytown Athletic Council, I sit back and just look at the growing numbers of people who are, just joining forces with the whole movement. And it's increasing. Every time I look at it, Everytown is, if not the biggest gun violence organization in our country. And there's a big number of other ones that's out there too. So you got a lot of people that's trying to fight the fight. I hope everybody can come together collectively, but stuff like that brings me hope. And, I want to continue to share my story, like I say, just to humanize, that people like myself who may be looked at as a superhuman. I go through these things too, and it's destroying families. You know, um, that stuff needs to change. So, yeah, I mean, it sucks for me to continue to see that stuff. It takes me back to my time. And as Diontae says, if we're not using our platform and sharing our stories, we're doing a disservice to the millions of other people who are going through the same thing that don't have a platform, they don't have a voice. And even for me, some of the other people that I know who have actually lost their lives, they can't speak out. So I'm here to stand in the gap, just like the rest of these guys here. And sorry, Deborah, but we're here to stand in the gap for those people and, just continue to push the narrative forward of ending gun violence.
Thank you. DeAndre, do you feel hopeful? What are you hopeful for? What change do you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, definitely hopeful for sure. I would definitely say through the kids. I mean, me dealing with my little brother's passing, I've always relished in being in that role of the big brother or big cousin. I have a huge family, and I have a bunch of little cousins that look up to me and want to play basketball, want to play football, or just want to do something in general. So just seeing my little cousin look up to me, obviously, kids that watch football, watch basketball, we have fans as well. Um, just trying to starting that role and just showing them the right way, even if everything doesn't seem like it's going your way. Just still keep push, and I think that just starts with the next generations that's coming after us for sure.
And Devereaux, are you hopeful?
I'm definitely hopeful. I think one of the things that's given me the most hope was actually really since joining and starting working with Everytown is just being able to see firsthand how many people believe in this cause and want to see change. Obviously, pre-COVID, actually going to events and speaking, but seeing all the people there that are advocating, and then also seeing a lot of like the younger chapters that are doing a lot of heavy lifting right now and doing a lot of work in their communities. Because I think that's really important, is having young folks understand just how important it is to, you know, for gun violence prevention, and just how much of an impact they can have. But seeing them understand that and put in so much work, it makes me really hopeful for the future, and that eventually we can turn the corner, because there are a lot of people on our side, a ton of people on our side that are working towards the same goal.
Definitely. Is there anything that y'all want to say that I haven't asked you about in regards to gun violence prevention or your organizations or anything like that?
I just want to just personally give a shout out to Everytown and, you know, just express that I'm thankful to be a part of, you know, the whole movement. And, you know, I know there's so much more work to be done. So, you know, I look forward to all of that kind of stuff, you know, just continuing to do the work, and with my fellow council members here, we could do some really good things. So like I said, I just want to give a shout out to Everytown and People Magazine for, you know, just giving us a voice too. I know a lot of people really tap into the People Magazine, so that's cool. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to be on this panel with some other amazing people here tonight.
No, I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for, you know, I know this is a lot of time, and I know your time is valuable. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.